It's not over. It's just louder in the quiet room now. And the quiet room is the one everybody forgot to watch. No press release. No apology. No tearful Instagram, live at 3 in the morning. Just one sentence, dropped by a woman who has been in this game long enough to know that the loudest weapon in a celebrity war is the one you never fire. And that sentence, 7 words, no names, no captions, no follow-up, is currently doing more damage to a 2-time undisputed world champion's public image than any punch that champion has ever thrown in a ring. Let me say that again, so it sits right. A woman who has not released a single mixtape in the last stretch of the story, has not gone on a press run, has not called a single podcast, has not sat down with a single interviewer, is currently outmaneuvering an Olympic gold medalist with an $8 million deal by doing absolutely nothing except smiling on camera and letting the internet do her legwork. That is not a coincidence. That is not luck. That is Remy Ma. And if you've been watching this Papoose, Claressa Shields, Remy Ma situation and thinking it is a simple love triangle between a rapper's wife, a rapper's girlfriend, and the rapper in the middle, I need you to sit down because you have been watching the wrong movie. What you are actually watching is a chess match where one player is publicly announcing every move on Instagram. One player has not touched a piece in months, but is somehow always 3 moves ahead. And one player thinks he is the king when he is actually the pawn everybody is repositioning. And when we get to the part about the unsigned paperwork and what Remy Ma has been doing while everybody was watching the wrong hand, I promise you we are getting there. You are going to understand why this entire narrative was engineered from a room nobody thought to look inside. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Alright, let's set the table properly. Because to understand why this situation is currently detonating across every hip-hop and boxing corner of the internet, you have to understand who is standing where and how they got there. Remy Ma and Papoose got married in 2016. That is not gossip. That is not rumor. That is public record. That paperwork exists. That paperwork has a date on it. And as of everything the public has been able to verify through credible outlets, that paperwork has not been undone. No finalized divorce announcement. No signed decree waved in front of a camera. Nothing. Which means the Papoose currently being publicly claimed as my man by one of the greatest women's boxers of all time is, at this exact moment, still legally the husband of the woman who once did a full prison bid and came home and rebuilt her entire career from scratch while he waited for her. That is not a small detail. That is the foundation of this entire story. On the other side of the triangle, you have Claressa Shields, who is not just some random girlfriend the internet is chewing on for content. Claressa Shields is Olympic gold, twice. She is undisputed in multiple weight classes. She has been reported to have signed one of the largest deals in women's boxing history, in the $8 million range according to the coverage that has followed her career. She is one of the most decorated athletes of her generation, full stop. And she is currently, publicly, aggressively, and consistently building a fairy tale narrative around Papoose in real time, talking about babies, talking about birthdays, talking about submission, talking about breakfast eggs, doing all of it loudly and on camera. And in the middle of all that noise is Papoose, who has not signed the papers, has not clarified his marital status in any final way that the public has seen, has not shut down the wife rumors, has not shut down the girlfriend rumors, and is instead standing exactly where every man in this kind of situation loves to stand. Right at the intersection of 2 women, benefiting from the confusion of both. The stakes here are enormous. Musically and career-wise, this affects a Grammy-nominated rapper who has spent his entire career selling loyalty as his brand. Culturally, this hits at the exact nerve of what Black love is supposed to look like in 2026. Financially, this could implode an $8 million deal if the paperwork underneath it turns out to be uglier than the sponsors were promised. And reputationally, one of these 3 people is going to end up looking like the villain of a story that will follow them for the rest of their public life. The question is which one? And I promise you, the answer is not the one the internet has been assuming. Now let's get into what is actually visible on the surface, because before we get into the layers underneath, we have to look at what everybody with a phone can see. Piece of evidence number 1, the Van Cleef bracelet moment. Claressa Shields posted a Van Cleef bracelet, credit to Papoose, framed exactly the way every look what my man got me post gets framed on social media. It was cute. It was expensive. It was the kind of soft flex that eats well on relationship accounts. And for about 2 days straight, that post was the winning move in the war. Then Remy Ma posted. No caption. No name. No shade written out. Just her wrist. Stacked. Multiple Van Cleefs. No words needed. And the internet read that response the way you are supposed to read a warning shot fired into the ceiling, as a message from a woman who is not begging for a seat at a table she already owns. And this is the part where you have to pay attention, because that post is not just jewelry content. That post is a woman telling the entire internet, without opening her mouth, you are trying to flex on me with one piece. I have 5. Try me again. Piece of evidence number 2, the eggs. Yes, we really are going to talk about the eggs, because in a story this layered, the smallest details are the loudest ones. A woman on video playfully asked Papoose how he liked his eggs. Before Papoose could open his mouth to answer, Claressa jumped in and said, and I quote loosely because you have seen the clip 1,000 times by now, scramble hard. I know exactly how he likes his eggs. Smile on her face. Confidence in her voice. Territory being staked out in a 2-second window. On the surface, cute. Under the surface, that is a woman planting a flag in a very specific, very personal, very small piece of information. How a man likes his breakfast. And doing it publicly in a moment designed to be clipped and shared. That is not a girlfriend being cute. That is a girlfriend broadcasting intimacy at a wife who has not been given the microphone. Piece of evidence number 3, the pregnancy pointing video. Papoose himself on video, pointing at Claressa's stomach, talking about a huge announcement, mentioning balloons, mentioning champagne, mentioning confetti, doing the full pre-announcement runway build that every celebrity pregnancy reveal has followed for the last 15 years. And Claressa standing right next to him, grinning ear to ear, letting every gossip account with a keyboard fill in the blanks. Within 12 hours, the entire hip-hop and boxing gossip ecosystem was in full pregnancy detective mode. And listen, when you build the runway that publicly and you invite the plane in that loudly, you cannot then be shocked when the internet says we saw the plane. Piece of evidence number 4, the I'm submissive to my man quote. On camera, in her voice, deliberate. I may have the muscles and I may know how to fight, but I'm very submissive to my man. That is a 2-time undisputed champion, an Olympic gold medalist, one of the most feared athletes in her sport, going on the record to tell an audience she is submissive. Not to Papoose, to us, to the audience, to the wife. And every one of these 4 pieces of surface evidence, taken alone, is nothing. Taken together, they are a pattern. And the pattern is a woman planting flag after flag after flag in public. And I have not even gotten to the part that broke the internet in half yet. And oh, do I have more for you? Because everything I just walked you through, the bracelet, the eggs, the pregnancy pointing, the submissive quote, that is layer 1. That is the surface. That is the part your cousin sent you in a group chat last week. What I am about to walk you into is the part the fan pages have not connected yet, the part the podcasts are still tiptoeing around, the part where the wife with a marriage certificate sitting quietly in her purse becomes the most dangerous person in this entire story. Because there is a sentence, 7 words, that changed the temperature of this whole thing, and the Team Claressa corner of the internet is really not going to like where this next section goes. Here is the moment the room flipped. Right in the middle of the pregnancy buzz, right when the gossip accounts were fully locked into the Claressa is pregnant, Papoose is thriving, Remy is invisible narrative. Remy Ma casually said, people would cry if they knew the truth. No name drop, no screenshot, no caption, no context, just that. A smile, a shrug, and a warning wrapped in silk. And this is the piece of cultural evidence that everything else in this story now bends around. Because that is not the sentence of a woman who was left. That is not the sentence of a woman who is sad. That is not even the sentence of a woman who is angry. That is the sentence of a woman who is holding something and has already decided you have to earn the right to see it. And in the culture of celebrity messiness, a culture Remy Ma has been inside of, survived inside of, and thrived inside of for over 2 decades, that specific tone is the tone of a woman with receipts. Cultural evidence. Piece 2. Winter Blanco stepping into the conversation and reframing the entire thing as an attack on black love. Winter Blanco is a name that carries weight in this specific corner of the internet. And when she publicly said, essentially, that people claim they want to see black love until it is standing right in front of them, that landed with Claressa's fan base like scripture. Team Claressa immediately picked it up as a shield. Stop attacking her for wanting a family. Stop attacking her for building with her man. Stop attacking her for being publicly in love. And listen, on paper, that argument is not stupid. On paper, black love should be defended. On paper, women should absolutely be free to plan the families they want with the men they want. But here is where the argument collapses under its own weight. And this is the moment where you have to be honest with yourself as a viewer. Real black love does not usually require a defense committee showing up every 7 days to explain why the girlfriend is not doing anything wrong while the wife is still legally in the picture. Real love does not need that much noise to stay standing. Real love just stands. Quietly. Cultural evidence. Piece 3. The come-up framing. Remy Ma, in her own voice, using the word come up in relation to Claressa Papoose. Not his girlfriend. Not his new woman. Come up. And you have to understand what that word does in hip-hop language, because that word is not neutral. That word reframes an entire relationship. That word says out loud that the person being described is benefiting from proximity to somebody bigger than them. That word says the visibility, the wave, the moment of being talked about, is being ridden, not built. And here is the twist that makes the framing genius. Claressa Shields does not need Papoose to be famous. She does not need Papoose to be rich. She does not need Papoose to be respected. She is already a champion. She already has the $8 million bag. She already has the Olympic medals. So when Remy calls her a come-up, Remy is not talking about money, and she is not talking about fame. Remy is talking about narrative. Remy is talking about who is the main character in this movie. And in one word, Remy quietly reminded millions of people that she is still the wife, still the mother of his kids, still the woman who was there before Papoose was ever attached to a title belt or an $8 million deal. Cultural evidence. Piece 4. The industry silence. Nobody on the rap side of the culture is defending Papoose here. Not loudly. Not consistently. Not on record. And in an industry where every man in a mess like this usually gets at least 3 podcast bros lining up to say, y'all leave bro alone, he's a real one. Papoose is getting radio silence from the very culture he built his brand inside. That silence is evidence. That silence is a room full of people who all know something the public does not know yet. And here is the moment I have to give the counter-argument its due, because I want to be fair. Somebody watching this right now is thinking, okay, but maybe Remy Ma is bitter. Maybe she is spinning. Maybe there is no truth behind the 7 words, and she is just protecting her ego. Fair. I hear you. But bitterness looks like something specific. Bitterness looks like tearful lives. Bitterness looks like subtweets. Bitterness looks like showing up in the comments of the other woman's posts. Bitterness looks like leaking screenshots. And Remy Ma has done none of that. Not one. Not once. What Remy Ma has done is smile, drop a sentence, wear her jewelry, and go about her business. And that is not what bitterness looks like. That is what a person with leverage looks like. And now that we have walked through the surface and the culture, we have to shift gears entirely, because what is actually driving the story is not happening on Instagram. It is happening in the parts of the business the public never gets to see. Here is where the gear shifts, because everything we have covered so far is entertainment. Everything from this point on is business. And if you are not ready to look at this situation as a business story instead of a love story, you are going to miss the entire point of why this is detonating the way it is. Angle 1. The paperwork. The single most important document in this entire narrative is a document nobody outside of a very small circle has ever seen. And that document is either a signed divorce decree or it is not. And based on everything credible reporting has been able to establish, it is not. That marriage from 2016 is still legally standing. Which means Papoose is not currently in a situation where he broke up with his wife and moved on to his girlfriend. Papoose is currently in a situation where he is publicly building a life with one woman while remaining legally, contractually, on paper bound to another. And in the world of celebrity business, that is not a personal detail. That is a liability. That affects estate planning. That affects tax filings. That affects joint asset ownership. That affects who is legally next of kin. That affects in the specific event of a child being born, who is legally presumed to have paternity rights under the law in multiple states, because in a lot of jurisdictions, if you are legally married to a woman and another woman gives birth to your child, the paperwork gets very complicated very fast, and lawyers get involved, and everything gets messy. Angle 2. The $8 million deal. That number, that reported $8 million figure, is not just a headline. It is a contract. And contracts of that size come with morality clauses. Contracts of that size come with sponsors. Contracts of that size come with brand partners who did their diligence before signing off. And every brand partner attached to Claressa Shields right now is currently quietly doing a private risk assessment on this entire situation. Because if the pregnancy announcement drops and the timeline turns out to be messier than the sponsors were told, If there is any overlap, any ambiguity, any suggestion that this baby is being brought into the world while another woman is still legally the wife of the father, that is not a personal story anymore. That is a corporate PR problem. That is a boardroom conversation. That is a we might need to restructure this deal meeting. And every executive attached to that $8 million figure is right now looking at Claressa's Instagram the same way an insurance adjuster looks at a car after an accident. That is not romance. That is risk. Angle 3, the media strategy. Look at the pattern of Claressa's posting behavior over the last stretch of this story. It has not just gotten louder. It has gotten faster. It has gotten more territorial. It has gotten more intense. The submissive quote. The my man language. The birthday baby announcement. The pregnancy hints. The bracelets. The eggs. All of it clustered. All of it escalating. All of it delivered with the energy of a person who is trying to lock something in before something else catches up. And you have to ask yourself the honest question. What is a woman that's secure in her relationship actually trying to outrun? Because secure women do not post like this. Secure women do not have to redefine the relationship every third post. Secure women do not have to publicly submit to prove they are chosen. Secure women live it. Quietly. Confidently. Without the campaign. And the fact that Claressa's public strategy has the exact volume and tempo of a political campaign, a campaign to convince the audience of something, is telling us something the audience is not saying out loud yet. It is telling us that the audience is being sold a narrative that the paperwork has not caught up to. And in this industry, paperwork always catches up. Always. It just takes its time. Angle 4 because I said 3 angles and I am giving you 4 because you subscribed for the real breakdown, the industry silence around Papoose. In hip-hop, when a beloved artist is going through a public mess, the culture usually rallies. Podcasts book him. Fellow rappers post support. Old collaborators show up in the comments. Nothing. And I mean nothing. Papoose is currently going through the most public relationship situation of his career, and the phones inside the industry are not ringing on his behalf. That silence is not neutral. That silence is the industry quietly saying they know something. And in a business where everybody talks, silence is always the loudest signal. Do you understand what I am telling you right now? The people who have the actual information, the label people, the management people, the promoter people, the podcast people, the ones who have been in the rooms, are declining to defend him. That is not a mistake. That is an assessment. And every day that silence extends, the picture gets a little clearer for anybody paying attention. And now we arrive at the sentence that has been sitting underneath this entire video. And I want you to sit with it before I say it, because once I say it out loud, you cannot unhear it. Everything Remy Ma is doing right now, the silence, the smile, the 7 words, the jewelry, the strategic non-response, the refusal to sit for a single interview, is not the behavior of a woman reacting to being replaced. That is the behavior of a woman running a psychological operation on a husband who thinks he is safely on the other side of the mess. Here is the truth bomb. What if people would cry if they knew the truth was never a warning to Claressa Shields at all? What if that sentence, the 7 words that broke the internet in half, was a private message wrapped inside a public quote aimed directly at Papoose himself? What if Remy Ma has not been fighting for her husband because she does not have to fight for her husband? Because she is holding something in her back pocket that she has already decided she will not release publicly, but she wants him to know that she could. Allegedly. Reportedly. According to what the pattern of behavior suggests, because I want to be crystal clear that nobody outside the inner circle has confirmed the specific content of what Remy is holding. But the pattern of behavior is unmistakable. That is a woman with a receipt. That is a woman with a document. That is a woman with a piece of information, maybe about a timeline, maybe about a paternity question, maybe about a private moment that happened when the public thought the marriage was already over, maybe about a fifth party nobody has even mentioned yet. And she is sitting on it, calm, smiling, letting the entire internet do her PR work for free while she reads the news. And here is what makes this so devastating. If that reading is right, then Papoose is not the prize in this story. Papoose is the pawn. Papoose is the piece being moved around by 2 women playing 2 entirely different games at 2 entirely different speeds. Claressa is playing the loud game, the public game, the visibility game, the lock him in before the paperwork catches up game. Remy is playing the quiet game, the patient game, the paperwork game, the let her keep talking, the receipts age well game. And every single podcast, every single gossip page, every single fan account is out here debating who Papoose loves more, when the actual question that decides this entire story is which woman is currently in a better strategic position. And the answer to that question is not close. Because in the age of the internet, the truth does not disappear. It just delays. And when it comes back with interest. Every screenshot, every gossip account took is sitting in cloud storage somewhere. Every clip Claressa posted, every quote from every interview, every Instagram live is archived, dated, and timestamped. And the day something breaks, a document, a photograph, a date that does not add up, every single piece of that archive becomes evidence. And Remy Ma, without ever raising her voice, will have built the largest, best organized, most damaging case file of the year, and she will not have had to type a single word. She just had to wait. And that, right there, is why people really might cry. Not because of a baby. Not because of a bracelet. Because of what the timeline exposes about all three of them once the paperwork finally catches up. Now here is where the story lands. And I need you to hear this clearly. Because this is the piece the internet keeps missing. Remy Ma is not losing. Remy Ma has never been losing. Remy Ma is doing what she has always done. She is doing every job to 100%, quietly, without a press run, without a live, without a podcast circuit, without a single moment of public panic. That is the woman who came home from a bid and rebuilt her career from the ground up. That is the woman who has spent decades being counted out and outlasting every count. That is the woman who never had to be the loudest to be the last one standing. And that is exactly why she is still standing in this story too. Because while one woman has been busy planting flags and eggs and bracelets and birthday plans, the other woman has been quietly holding the deed. And a deed always beats a flag. Every single time. Look at every specific moment we have walked through in this video and reframe it through the position Remy is actually in right now, and you will see it. The Van Cleef stack? That was not a flex. That was a woman calmly telling the entire internet she is not scrambling for scraps. The 7-word sentence? That was not a rant. That was a woman using the smallest amount of ammunition to do the most amount of damage. The refusal to sit for an interview? That was not avoidance. That was discipline. The refusal to attack Claressa personally? That was not weakness. That was strategy. Because you cannot be painted as the bitter wife if you never open your mouth to be bitter. The refusal to publicly clarify the status of the marriage? That was not indecision. That was leverage. Because as long as the ambiguity exists, Papoose exists inside the ambiguity too. Everything the internet mistook as passivity was actually position. And here is the contrast line that summarizes the entire story in one breath. One woman is out here trying to claim a man. The other one is quietly held onto the paperwork that says she still has him on record. Claiming is loud. Having is quiet. And in this fight, quiet is winning. And listen, I have been watching this story since the first sign of it, and I have said from the beginning, the woman with the marriage certificate does not need to raise her voice for a single second. Because time is on her side and paperwork does not lose to noise. Not ever. Not in 2026. Not with this much digital archive. Not with this many cameras rolling. And that is why, at the end of this entire mess, the person who is still going to be standing exactly where she has always stood is the person who never moved. Remy Ma. Doing every job to 100%. Unfazed. Rising. Still winning, without even being outside. And this is only the start. I want to be specific about that, because I do not do vague teases. There are 2 things coming in the story that you need to be watching for right now. And if you are not subscribed when they hit, you are going to be catching up in a group chat, while everybody else is watching the breakdown in real time. The first thing to watch is the announcement itself. If Claressa Shields moves forward with the pregnancy announcement she has been publicly building toward, that reveal is not going to land as a celebration. That reveal is going to land as a trial. Every gossip account, every fan page, every podcast, every YouTuber is going to line updates, screenshots, interviews, and public appearances against the specific week the pregnancy was announced. And if there is any timeline overlap with the still standing marriage, this story doubles in size overnight. The second thing to watch is Remy Ma's next public move. Because when she moves, and she will move on her own timing, not anybody else's, it is not going to be a rant, it is not going to be an interview, it is not going to be a subtweet. It is going to be one thing. One document, one photo, one date, one number. And that one thing is going to reset this entire story on new terms. So subscribe. Not later. Right now. Because when either of those 2 dominoes falls, we are breaking it down here first. We are breaking it down in full. And we are not waiting for the rest of the internet to catch up. And listen, if you thought this Papoose, Claressa, Remy situation was layered, wait until you see what we are dropping next. Because there is a name in the rap industry right now, a much bigger name, a name currently sitting at the top of the streaming charts, with a deal structure that on paper looks like the greatest come up in modern hip-hop. And I have been sitting on a breakdown that shows why every move that artist has made in the last 2 years was never actually their choice. It was a signature, signed in a room nobody was supposed to know about. And when we get to the contract structure breakdown in that video, and I promise you we are getting there, you are going to understand why the winner you think you are watching is actually the pawn in a much bigger game. That video is next. Do not miss it. Peace.